All right, hi there, everyone. Welcome to our live post-game coverage, Believe in Bills, here on YouTube. Adam Bonini, WGRZ TV, and Sports Talk Live Buffalo, and Sel Mayorana. You see him there, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Highmark Stadium, 31-7. Bills AFC Wild Card win over the Denver Broncos. And look, Sal, we had thought this was the Bills clearly the more talented team, rookie quarterback, and they were able to pull away in this game, taking advantage of there was some really strong positive aspects in this game for Buffalo. Denver hung in there for a while, but after that opening strike by the Broncos, the Bills were able to really kind of find a rhythm and lock things down, and as expected, able to advance on the divisional round. Your initial impressions?
Yeah, I mean, I did not expect this to be a 31-7 game. I really thought the Broncos were going to give the Bills a tough game, and for 2.5 quarters, it was exactly that. I mean, it was a 13-7 game. The Broncos were doing enough on defense to frustrate. I thought Allen in the passing game had a tough time early, but then, Josh Allen makes the play of the game, as he often does, with that touchdown throw to Ty Johnson, and from that moment on, the game was pretty much over. So, big-time players, right? Big-time players make big-time plays. He picked a very important time to make one. Now, I asked him in the locker room after, and I asked Sean McDermott. I said, okay, look, I mean, ended up being a nice result, but that was some damn lucky football right there. They both kind of denied that, just trying to make a play. Bullshit. They called a huge break. They caught a huge break on that play. It worked out great, and the Bills win the game.
That's fourth down and what, a 6-point game at that point, right? And it seemed like forever he was able to hang on to the football. And then the fact that Johnson was able to somehow keep himself in bounds and make that as he made that catch. That's probably not an advised play, but I noticed you in the post game with McDermott, talking about his trust in Josh Allen. He'll take it every time. He kind of had the cat that ate the canary look on his face. Yeah.
Well, it was one of those no, yes plays, right? I mean, and we've seen Josh Allen have a bunch of those plays in his career. That was a dangerous situation because, first of all, I mean, we can get into all this, I'm sure, but what I didn't like about it, Adam, is they're 4th and 1. I'm fine with going for it. I just hated that he put him in shotgun because you're pretty much right there tipping off that it's going to be a pass. And then Denver did everything that it had to do to defend the play. They couldn't have defended it any better. They even had him covered on the scramble. If he had tried to run, they were going to most likely get him. So he just kind of threw it up in up for grabs there in the end zone. And he was very fortunate that Ty Johnson was able to get open, caught the ball, and completed the catch. So a lot of things went incredibly well. But if they don't make that, we're looking at a 13-7 game. Denver's fired up, and now they got a chance to go the other way. So, I mean, these are the things that happen in playoff games. These are the differences between winning and losing. You've got to have a play like that somewhere along the way in many of these games, and that was the one for the Bills today.
Yeah, and you know what? But Allen makes plays like that, right? To Buffalo's credit.
He does.
I mean, that's kind of what that off-schedule stuff is what has separated him from so many and has him at such an elite level in the National Football League. So, we're going to get into all of it again. 31-7, Bills over the Broncos to advance on to the divisional round, now setting up the matchup with the Baltimore Ravens, which should be a hell of a game. This will be – the fact they're at home is big, and we'll talk as much about that, I think, as we will what happened on the field today. We invite your comments and questions as, again, we're live, Believe in Bills, Believe Network, here on YouTube. Roy Osborne chiming in. Broncos played horrible. Got to show you they are an average team. Been saying it all season long, but I believe they are on the rise. There you see his comment right there. They are a team, with an upward trajectory. There's no question. And there were some things about Knicks that I liked in this game. I also liked a lot of what I saw from the Buffalo defense. 3rd down played, and then I think Denver was 2 of 9, and that's been a stat that's been kind of a sore subject for the Bills all season long. I mean, I think that the Broncos are a team that's ahead of schedule. The Bills are a team now that's evolved, and a quarterback that's evolved to a team that's on schedule as one of the elite teams. I think it played out over the 4-quarter course of the game.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, I mean, I thought Bo Nix played – he had a hell of a season. I mean, for the way he started the first 5, 6, 7 games, people laughing at him, and he couldn't do anything right early in the season. And he really got it together. And he was one of the best quarterbacks, believe it or not, in the NFL over the last 2/3 of the season. I mean, he was really, really good. And, last week, Adam, we talked about, what's disappointing about New England is that they found their franchise quarterback. Now they've probably got their franchise coach too, as of today. But I think there was also that point last week where the Patriots losing the game cost them the number 1 pick, and that was a reason for Bills fans to be happy. Another reason for Bills fans to be happy today regarding the opponent, Bo Nix is a player, and I think we finally have a team that can actually challenge the Chiefs in the AFC West. I think Denver is definitely, with this defense that they've got, if they can keep it together, I'm not sure what their free agent situation is, but if they keep that defense together and they start building more around Bo Nix, because he needs help, they need a running game for sure, they might be the team that can really challenge the Chiefs in that AFC West, which they've won for a decade straight. So that's the good news from the Bills side of things. Of course, you might see the Broncos in the playoffs next year too. They're going to be a pretty good team for a few years to go here now.
Well, you look when you find that coach-quarterback combination in so many places, right? In so many examples, right? Like Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. That's the in that division especially, and in the league, the best example. But ESPN had a feature on its pregame countdown show today where they had Drew Brees come on, who of course played with Peyton, under Peyton, so many years in New Orleans, and talked about, and this speaks to what you talked about, Nix's struggles early in the year, the complexity of the Sean Payton offense. And they actually use some examples of the language, and it's like there's like 13, 14 terms on some of these plays. And they tried to ease Nix into it a little bit, but there's obvious growing pains associated with that. And I think we saw some of that from Nix early in the year, but he kind of found a groove and has a very good grasp of it. And he's a, first to the facility, last to leave type player. And so he's really picked that up. So I think that accents your point, Sal, as to what that team might be capable of if they put some quality pieces around him. When you have a quarterback like that with Peyton, who's proven to be so effective as an offensive head coach, certainly, something to think about in terms of the future. Quick note from the sponsor here. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. The largest selection on odds of everything from football, the NBA, NHL, college basketball, the UFC as well. Head to Bet Online today. Don't forget, use the promo code BLEAV, BLEAV. You get a welcome bonus on your first deposit. All right, 31-7.
Adam, in terms of Nix, I liked a lot of what I saw today. He has a really good sense for the pocket. The Bills' pass rush was not good at all today, which is something we've grown accustomed to in January. And when they did get close to him, he knew where to go, how to get out of the pocket. He scrambled well, and I thought he threw a couple passes today that his receivers just let him down on. He had a couple of dimes that would have been big plays in this game. Yeah, for sure.
Two.
At least two
that stalled drives.
So he made some plays in this game. I think they've got a guy there. I think they definitely do. But, this is also a Bills team, Adam, that is so playoff tested. They got punched in the mouth on the 5th play of the game. There was a clear breakdown in the deep secondary there, and Franklin got behind him for a touchdown. Denver didn't score again. Nix had 101 yards passing after that play. We still had 55 minutes of game time. He had 101 yards. The Bills just locked it down. They were really good on 3rd down today. A lot of things went into slowing down Bo Nix. They only had the ball for 18 minutes. I mean, the Bills had the ball the whole game. It was just an unbelievable, balanced performance by the Bills on offense. And then when they were on the field on defense, just did a lot of good things to slow down Nix and that offense.
Yeah, I want to get into a lot of that point that you just made. Time of possession, boy, when you look down the stats, right? 41-43 for Buffalo, 18 minutes, 17 seconds for the Denver Broncos. That's W every time.
Now we know what Jim Kelly felt like in Super Bowl 25, right?
Right.
Never had the ball.
Exactly.
Same thing.
But you had mentioned balance on offense, and I want to go there first here because we had talked all week long about, Denver top in terms of the pass rush, 63 sacks, all of that. And we felt like the Bills were equipped as an offense to deal with that, primarily because of their quarterback in Josh Allen, the offensive line so effective. But you mentioned the balance, right? And again, it's a historic accomplishment. First team in NFL history with 30-plus passing touchdowns and 30-plus rushing touchdowns. And I think we saw that today. The best way to deal with pressure is to run the football. And that was their plan with James Cook, and he was so effective with 120 yards rushing, so many of those in the first half, especially a touchdown as well. And that did a lot to negate the effectiveness to those Denver pressure packages and then help to set things up from a passing game perspective as the game went on. I mean, they just executed what was obviously their game plan very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly went into the game knowing that Denver's pass rush was spectacular. 63 sacks. They do it in a variety of ways. And part of the package is they blitz. They blitz as much as any team in the NFL. And I think what the Bills wanted to do, and they clearly did it, is they wanted to catch Denver and use some of that aggressiveness that they have up front with their front seven and catch them on a few quick hitting plays. And they did that. The offensive line, I thought, had a great day. They were creating those creases. The Broncos would attack, and the Bills were hitting them those, Cook was hitting the creases, and that really worked. Again, that's how you slow down a pass rush, is to run the ball. He ended up getting sacked twice in the game, and I think those were coverage sacks more than anything else. I mean, the Bills' line on both of those sacks held up well enough, at least usually well enough for Josh Allen, and he had nowhere to go with the ball because they're very good in the secondary too. So it was a great plan by Joe Brady. The balance they showed, the patience they showed. There were times where, like for instance, one of them in particular that pissed me off was the first drive of the third quarter. They got down there, first down and goal, and they got to the 6. It was second and goal. I turned to Skursky next to me and I said, they need to throw on both of these downs or they're not going to score. Well, that second down run to Cook, they were waiting for it, and it blew up the whole drive, and then they couldn't convert on third down. So I'm thinking, well, there you go. They've been showing patience all game, but you got to mix it up. And Brady, in that moment, failed to do it. It was one of the few times that I was pissed off with what Brady did today, but that was a key moment where 7 points turned into 3. So, but back to your point, yes, they ran the ball great today. They do that next week. Now we're talking about a hell of a chance to beat Baltimore if you can keep their offense off the field and control the game with your own running game. That would be a recipe for success next week.
Something tells me that's not going to be – that's a steeper hill to climb against that Ravens defense, which is so good against the run, right? I mean, and we'll talk more about that as we continue on here. A couple of comments before we get to some additional points. Gerald Nunn, impressed with how the defense shut down the Broncos after that first series despite the lack of pressure. You had alluded to that earlier and given an answer. And what was the conversation Josh Allen had with the ref on the holding call? That was the play you just referenced, the third down play after the Cook run, right early in the third quarter. There was an obvious hold on Surtain on Kincaid in the end zone that they didn't call. And Josh was letting the official have it. You were in the postgame with Josh. He really didn't want to get into that, but I think he was told to kind of watch his tone with the officials. I think that's what he said, right?
And it was an obvious blown call by the official, and it cost the Bills, 4 points probably. So he was chirping pretty good with the officials over there, and one of them actually came over to the sideline because he was still going at it, and they just told him, "Shut up! you're getting close to a penalty." And then Josh didn't want to say what he said, but yeah, that was clearly he was aggravated, and for good reason. Like I said, that could have been a big play in the game. They had to settle for the 3 points, but that's what that was all about. They're going to miss calls at him. I mean, that one, the guy was standing right there, though. I mean, his duty is to look at that play, and he was right in front of him. I'm not quite sure how we missed it, but, those things happen. It ends up being a moot point.
I think I want to spend a little bit of time talking about initial thoughts on the matchup with Baltimore here, because everyone's kind of, shifting a focus now to that. And maybe as we transition to that, I want to talk a little bit more about Buffalo's defense today. We mentioned 2 of 9 on third down. They gave up, that 3rd and 8 early. And I kind of rolled my eyes, and I'm like, okay, here we go again.
I tweeted it. I said, here we go.
After that, they really did a very good job, and they held Denver, I think it was to 79 yards rushing, which that wasn't going to be a big threat. They're vulnerable against the run, but that's not Denver's MO. It's more about Bo Nix. But there were some things I liked in this game, and one of them was Milano. him getting back to being the map, that sideline pursuit of Nix, where Nix was trying to turn the corner at the right side and Milano was spying him. I haven't seen that explosiveness from Milano since he's been back from the injuries. That looked much more like the Matt Milano that Bills fans have come to know. And if he can play at that level, that's a big factor, I think, for this defense moving forward.
Last week it worked out well because he had the 4 games. Well, actually, it was 4 games to kind of get up to speed, and then he sat out the 1 game with the groin injury last week. Last week he sat out with the groin injury, and that actually Sean even alluded to that after the game today. That little extra time off, even though he was still dealing with a bit of an injury, that actually probably helped him because he had the run up of those 4 games, and you're trying to get yourself back into game shape, and he had done that. He was ready to go, and it was unfortunate that he had the injury, but even having last week off might have done him some good, and I thought he did look pretty good today. He was moving more like the Matt Milano that we're used to seeing, and that was a nice play that he made on Nix. I mean, I think that was a 3rd down, right? I think that created
it was a 3rd down play,
down, and they kept him short because it looked like he was going to get there, and it ended up forcing a punt, so that was a nice play.
All right, so why don't we shift now to focus on the matchup with the Ravens, and let's keep it on the defensive side for Buffalo, because now you're dealing with a whole different aspect when you're talking about Lamar Jackson, right? And the thing that makes the Ravens the most dangerous, and Buffalo found this out in week 4, that 35-10 loss down there. When you add a Derrick Henry into the mix, right? Lamar Jackson doesn't. I mean, of course, they rely on his athleticism and his escapability, but they don't have to rely on it as much. The Bills are actually a good example of this point as well with James Cook and the running game that we have talked about. But when you add like a heavy in there with Derrick Henry, and they can beat you with a traditional running game and then take advantage of everything that Lamar Jackson brings to the table, that's a whole different aspect to consider when you're talking about this defense, which has been vulnerable against the run. And that Baltimore game early in the year was a great example of it. Now, if we can initially, I mean, it's a whole different matchup to sort of project when you're looking at what the Ravens are bringing from an offensive standpoint and the challenge this defense faces.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole different ball of wax here. I mean, now you're going to be playing the team that might be the hottest in the NFL. And quite frankly, they might be the best team in the NFL. I mean, I know there's some really good teams on the NFC side, Detroit for sure, and Philadelphia. I'm not sure what's going on in that game right now, but they're very good. But this Baltimore team is going to be a wagon for the Bills. And, I hate to be the Debbie Downer here, but the Bills are going to have to play, I think, maybe their best game of the season to beat Baltimore. If Baltimore continues to play the way it's played lately, they're going to be an incredibly tough challenge for the Bills. And, 31 points today was really good against a very good defense. They're going to need to do at least that, I'm thinking, next week, because that offense can easily get into the 30s against this Buffalo defense. Again, this is not the time or place for us to probably be talking about the Bills losing the game next week. They played very well today. It was a hard-earned and well-earned win, but they're going to have to be even better than they were today if they want to beat the Ravens next week. I think we could all kind of agree on that. There's no denying it. So let's, enjoy this win, but they got to be better next week.
Yeah, I mean, the dimension that Derrick Henry adds to that offense with the quarterback they have, and then you consider their defense, which I think led the National Football League in opponent rush yards, right? They held the Steelers to 29 yards in that game, right?
I mean,
the Steelers are the Steelers, but that's still, kind of a number that confirms that point. And then really they were vulnerable against the pass, and I think still are perhaps against this offense, but they made some changes mid-season. Yeah. And that secondary is in a much better place now. And I think that's been a big part of what's elevated them to the level they're at right now. And you refer to them as perhaps the best team in the National Football League. Those personnel changes they made were significant in the secondary. And they haven't allowed more than 17 points since December 1st. to an opponent.
They're playing
right.
They're playing great. They're going to be very, very difficult for the Bills to beat. Buffalo's going to have to play a flawless game, no turnovers. Of course, there were no turnovers today. That was part of the script. But yeah, they've got to have a lot of things go well for the Bills next week. And home field is nice. Home field doesn't mean they're going to win the game. So that's going to be a tough challenge for the Bills, no doubt.
Yeah, the defense. This is a much more advanced program, if you will. They're obviously way beyond where the Broncos are. They are an established force in this conference, and it's about how you're playing at this particular time of year. And the Ravens obviously are playing as well as anyone. As we record this, I have not seen over the last 20, 30 minutes since we've been on a tweet come out that confirms the day and time of that game, but it is Baltimore and Buffalo at Highmark Stadium, where Sal Mayorana is coming from.
We were speculating they're probably going to get the late game on Sunday, I would think, which I think is going to be a 6:30 game. I'm not sure exactly, but I think the Chiefs are probably going to get the Saturday game. That's what we were thinking, at least. And I think, and let's face it, CBS wants Ravens Bills in the biggest window, so that'll be the night game. I'm almost positive. I'd be shocked if it isn't.
All right. And one more comment before we wrap it up here. Nate and Yellow chiming in. Von Miller has much more pep in his step and should be very helpful in these playoffs going forward. What are your impressions with him today? You saw like the vaunted spin move on him and affecting the quarterback. And, he has looked more like himself. And he's alluded to the fact that the gaps of time he's had off for whatever reason. They're using him in a way, given his ability and also his age and the miles he has on him, right, that he can be as effective as possible. And I thought, he was a factor in this game today.
Yeah, he flashed on one play that I noticed, and he almost got the sack. But again, Adam, overall, I wasn't impressed by the Bills' pass rush. Anybody? Rousseau had a really nice sack, but he also had a great play in the run game too. He's their best pass rusher, and they're going to need him to be absolutely elite against Lamar Jackson. And even then, he could be elite and still not get Lamar Jackson to the ground. I thought today there were too many times where Knicks dropped back and there was a lot of time to throw. And like we referenced early in the show, thankfully the Broncos had a couple of big drops in some key situations. And, maybe things would have gone a little bit differently. Who knows? They need more. Von Miller, we'll see what the snap counts were. Again, they were only on the field for 18 minutes, so he didn't have many snaps. Right. Next week, I'm pretty sure he's going to have more snaps, so maybe he can impact that game. But again, this pass rush, look, they won the game. We shouldn't be complaining about anything, but they need to be a better pass rush team because Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, or maybe Mahomes and the Chiefs later on, would definitely exploit if those guys have time to throw.
Yeah, right. The vulnerability of the Bills' defensive front, whether it be against the run or the pass rush, which has not been consistent enough this season. Now that you're getting to the divisional round and potentially the AFC Championship, these caliber of opponents, that's where that gets tested to the max. All right, it's a 31-7 final. Sal Mayorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, coming to us from the Highmark Stadium press box. Are you done writing for the night, or how much more work you got to do, and what can folks look for at I knew the answer to that question before I asked it. Where you at, and what can people go to the website for?
Yeah, my game column is already up there full of quotes, and now I'm just doing the report card, and then I'll probably have to write something when we get a time on the game for Sunday or Saturday or Sunday. But nope, the work never ends, Adam. I'll tell you what, though, I had to pack a bag today because in case they lost, I had to be back in the morning. So I told my sister, who lives in Clarence, might be stopping tonight, sleeping over, but don't have to, so I can go home to my own bed and have another week of Bills coverage, which is good. We were all talking in the press box like none of us are ready for the off-season baloney. We want to keep the season going because the season's fun. It's fun to cover the season. The off-season, not so much. So they gave us at least one more week here.
I like that veteran level of preparation by
That's
you.
Right.
That's a veteran move. All right, we appreciate it. Sal Mayorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, democratandchronicle.com. Adam Bonini, WGRZ TV, and we'll have a full recap and look ahead in depth to the Baltimore Ravens tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, WGRZ, Channel 2 in Buffalo with Vic Carucci and John Scott. Again, 31-7 final. Bills advance out of the wild card round with a win over the Denver Broncos. For Sal Majorana in Orchard Park, I am Adam Bonini in Amherst. Thank you so much for being with us here on Believe. In Bills, we'll see you on Wednesday looking ahead to next weekend.
Okay.